Now let's stay in the US because, as you might have heard on Arise News, lawyers representing Donald Trump have formally asked for his hush money conviction to be overturned ahead of his return to the White House. In May, Mr. Trump was found guilty of falsifying business records over payments he made to a porn actress. Mr. Trump is arguing that Joe Biden let the cat out of the bag when he issued a pardon for his son Hunter, because he essentially admitted that the justice system in America can be subject to political interference. And Mr. Trump says, like Hunter, he too was a victim of a politically motivated prosecution, and that he was subjected to precisely the type of political theater that President Biden has condemned. Meanwhile, President Biden has concluded his 3-day visit to Angola, his last official overseas trip before his presidency ends next month. On the final day of the visit, Mr. Biden toured the Lobito Corridor, which is a 1,300 railway line that stretches from Zambia to Angola, that is financed by the US. President Biden also held a summit with the presidents of Angola, the Democratic Republic of Congo, and Zambia. The meeting was also attended by the Vice President of Tanzania. It's the first time an American president has visited Angola, and it's Mr. Biden's first and only official visit to sub-Saharan Africa as president. Well, for more on this, I'm joined now on the line from Washington by the US-based international human rights lawyer Emmanuel Ogebe, who is also a current affairs analyst and a pro-democracy advocate with the US-Nigeria Law Group in Washington. Thank you for joining us, Emmanuel. Let's start with Mr. Biden's just concluded trip to Angola. What is your assessment of the significance of that visit?
Well, I tell you that his visit is basically underwhelming. And that is because in the last quarter century that I've lived in the US, we have had US presidents visit Africa multiple times. Bill Clinton visited Nigeria multiple times, visited Africa multiple times, and so did Bush and Obama. Trump was the only American president who did not visit Africa in the last 25 years. So the fact that Biden managed to squeeze this into the dying hours of his presidency isn't as great as it could have been. I think he just managed to check the box and do one over Trump than if it was a very intentional, strategic, targeted play for the continent. You will note, of course, that Netanyahu of Israel, Putin, the president of India, China, of course, are all of the major geopolitical players who have made trips to Africa in an effort to gain influence. So this is too late and a dollar short.
Nevertheless, there are dollars being spent, certainly in that Lobito corridor by the United States, in fact, billions of dollars. And I'm wondering whether, as you know, Donald Trump is set to take office in January, whether he's likely to reverse Joe Biden's Africa-focused initiatives.
Well, the jury is kind of out on this. And I will say this, we have one term of Trump to look back on to give us an indication of what his Africa or Afrocentricity would be like. And first of all, he didn't visit Africa, so it wasn't really a priority for him. Secondly, when his Secretary of State did come to Africa, and while he was in Nigeria, Trump fired him. And so that was a disgrace, not only to the United States, but to the African countries that had just hosted, Secretary of State Tillerson. Now, on the other hand, we do have to acknowledge that Trump inked a deal with Nigeria that allowed Nigeria to acquire the Tucano aircraft that the Air Force had been looking for years, which the Obama administration failed to give him. And he also inked an agreement with Buhari during Buhari's White House visit to sell grain to Nigeria. So what that tells you is that Trump is transactional. And so long as he feels that there's a deal he can do in Africa, he will do that. Let's remember, of course, that when he met with African heads of state at the UN, he famously said, "Oh, you've made a lot of my friends millionaires." So he has, that mercantilist interest in Africa, even if he calls African nations shithole countries.
Yeah, I was hoping we wouldn't hear that word again, and hopefully we won't hear it during his return presidency, let me put it that way. But speaking of Donald Trump, his lawyers have formally asked for his hush money conviction to be overturned ahead of his return to the White House. Mr. Trump insists that like Hunter Biden, he too was the victim of a politically motivated prosecution, and that he was subjected to precisely the type of political theater that President Biden has condemned, and alleged that that was what put his son in the position that he got into. Is that a fair assessment?
Well, it isn't, and let's put this in perspective. The number of cases like Hunter Biden's that were prosecuted are highly minuscule. In other words, when there's drug involvement and there was impairment of judgment and so on and so forth, those are mitigating circumstances that cause prosecutors to say, look, this person has been rehabilitated, and so there is no point prosecuting this. Now, Trump's case is there's no sign of rehabilitation. And we're not talking about a drug case. We're talking about a CEO of a company who willfully and knowingly paid out money to cover up sexual dalliances, to influence an election. And while in the White House, wrote checks, 34 checks, to cover up that. So it was a very premeditated crime. And secondly, let's point out that the prosecution is a state prosecution. It's not a federal one. So President Biden doesn't even have the authority to pardon Trump. This would be an issue that is solely within the jurisdiction of New York State. And so going to the court and making this half-assed argument is highly unfortunate, because he has been convicted by a jury of his peers. And if truly no one is above the law, he deserves to be sentenced. Let's be clear that CEOs who have engaged in this kind of fraud have been prosecuted. So there's a pattern of prosecution to hold them accountable. And Trump is simply trying to buck the system once again without showing any penitence or repentance for his criminal actions.
Well, as you said the last time, I hope it doesn't come after you, because certainly I appreciate that. The good thing is that you're a lawyer, so you can,
by God's grace,
you can ably defend yourself. But I always appreciate your analysis, because it's full of clarity. Thank you very much indeed. Emmanuel Ogebe is a US-based international human rights lawyer, a current affairs analyst, and a pro-democracy advocate. And he was talking to me on the line from Washington.